I'm Mary Palmer, a member of the League of Women Voters of the City of New York. Welcome to the debate amongst the candidates running in the Democratic primary for the 27th State Senatorial District. This district, which was redrawn after the 2010 census, encompasses the west side of Manhattan from 72nd Street to Spring Street and includes Greenwich Village and the East Village. It represents over 212,000 residents. This is an open seat as State Senator Thomas Dwayne is retiring, and the winner of the September 13th primary may face a challenger in the November 6th election. The questions and format were developed by the League, and the candidates are seated in order of closing statements, which was determined by a lot. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to answer each of the questions and make 1.5-minute closing statement. The candidates are Mr. Tom Greco, Mr. Brad Hoylman, and Ms. Nika Inlaw. We'll start with Mr. Greco on the economy. More jobs have lost in the public sector than the private sector, yet governments are suffering from reduced tax revenue. What can the state legislature do to improve the job situation in the city, particularly in the district you want to represent?
First, to close the budget, I mean, we definitely need a more progressive tax system where the billionaires and millionaires contribute more. When it comes to unemployment, I think we need to start repairing our bridges and roads that are crumbling. I think this project would create more jobs, obviously creating more taxes and improving the city and the state.
Mr. Hoylman?
Well, really, we need to bring back the millionaire's tax. Governor Cuomo essentially canceled it a year ago, and that resulted in about $2 billion lost annually to the state of New York. If we brought that back, I think it would be a good first step. We certainly need to also look at other loopholes that we can close in connection with our economy, in particular the carried interest exemption, which would bring up to $200 million annually to the city of New York. We need a more progressive taxation system, and we also need to raise the minimum wage. You know, New York is lagging behind other states in the region in its minimum wage. We haven't raised it in over 10 years, and a family of 2 on the minimum wage is beneath the poverty line. That's unacceptable.
Hey, Ms. Inlaw.
I believe that we definitely need a more progressive tax, and millionaire taxes has to be brought into our system. We also need to make sure that we find new ways of revenue, maybe partners with public and private sectors. Maybe that can be another revenue for us to have. We also have to make sure we keep in account that there has to be a cap on loopholes for the financial elite, because I believe that if we have a middle class that are being taxed more so than the very wealthy, the ultra wealthy, where the middle class is being the burden of the economy. And that, to me, is the reason why so many people are suffering.
Thank you. Speaking of sort of how that impacts that, we're going to start about housing, and we're going to start this question with Mr. Hoylman. There's a shortage of affordable housing in the city. Given the lack of federal and state funding, what can the state legislature do to stabilize the housing market?
Well, it's a very important issue, Mary, and I hear it every day when I'm out on the campaign trail. We need to preserve the affordable housing we have, and to start with, we need for New York City to get control over its rent laws. You know, state senators 300 miles away are deciding New York City's rent stabilization laws. That's just not right. Not only that, we need to end luxury decontrol, which has resulted in hundreds of thousands of units being decontrolled since 2000. In addition to that, the governor created something called the Tenant Protection Unit, which was a good first step in making sure that tenants have a voice at the DHCR in Albany. Unfortunately, he's not put any resources into it, so we need to fix that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Inlaw.
One of the things that I would do is I would sponsor a bill that will regulate the vacancy and decrease vacancy laws so that the landlords won't have a temptation to actually do illegal tactics to get tenants out. So I would like to repeal the vacancy increase law from 20% all the way down to 7%. I think that if there is such a small advantage where people to move out, where the landlords can't hike up their rents like they did in Stuyvesant Town to Peter Cooperville, which is my district, in, some years back, there will be less displacement in the city. I also believe that we need to make sure that affordable housing is being built, similar to the Mitchell-Lama model, but it needs to be restructured where it's in perpetuity. Because I believe that if we don't have something where it's not just 30 years, then it's going to be a problem. Where are the people going to go after 30 years of living in rent-stabilized apartments? That's over with. Now we have to move. Right. I'm actually a victim of that with my grandmother. I grew up in a Mitchell-Lama apartment.
I'm sorry, we have to move on.
Thank you
very much. You can address that in your closing statements more if you'd like. Mr. Greco?
Yeah, housing is a huge problem, especially where I live in Hell's Kitchen. I live in Special District, and all around the fringes on the west side, they're building these ultra-luxury premium housing. And the middle class is getting squeezed out. And I agree with Tamika that we need to bring back Mitchell-Lama, give them the tax incentives that they want, and instead of doing an 80-20, be aggressive and do a 60-40, because you know our teachers, our postal workers, our police officers, they're being pushed out of Manhattan. By having affordable housing, you would solve a lot of the issues with education and some of the things that are going on with the police department today.
Thank you. Third question is about education. Due to the economic crisis, education budgets have been slashed so severely that opportunities for students are limited, more limited than they have in the last 40 years. How do you plan to put the educational needs of your constituents at your top priorities? For this third question, I'd like to start with Ms. Inlaw.
Well, I'm actually an educator myself. I'm a New York City public school teacher. I have 2 children in public school, and I'm a product of a public school education all the way throughout graduate school. I believe strongly in an public educational system. One of my major priorities is education because I have a vested interest in it. I see what happens when there is less funding in the educational system. We need a model that is holistic and not dogmatic, like I've been saying in the past. One that is building, the education system is built from bottom up, not top down. With that, I gotta tell you, I don't agree with the mayoral control. I believe that, yes, there was some issues with the board before, but we need a checks and balance system. Maybe we also need to have parental involvement where we check some of the boards. And I know we're timed, but I want to make sure that we understand that education has to be done with a holistic community approach. So that's one of the things that I would do to remodel our system.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hoylman.
Well, Mary, I certainly agree that education has to be our top priority. It's for the future of our city's economy is really dependent on it. Out on the campaign trail, I hear from parents every day who feel frustrated that they've been cut out of the system, that they don't have a voice. So we need to strengthen our community education councils and give them the resources, much like we do our community boards, where they have a real role in making decisions. Currently, parents are shut out. And we need to make certain that teachers no longer feel like the villains in the play. For far too long during this administration, it's been an unfortunate situation where teachers are blamed for just about everything. That has to be changed. Teachers are the solution and not the problem. I'm very proud, Mary, to have worked with local parents in my district and located 2 new public schools in the district, a new middle school and a new elementary school, both public. And I hope that represents to voters my commitment to this very important issue. Thanks.
Mr. Greco?
Yeah, education is extremely important to me. I'm recently married and looking to start a family. And going back to what I said earlier before about housing, I mean, if you supply more affordable housing where the teachers can live inside the communities that they work, I feel that they would have a better understanding about the environment and the social issues, and in turn providing a better education. I also feel that they need to get paid more. They need the resources. And I also agree with with Brad, with the parental involvement. They need to supply some kind of, I feel almost like a syllabus of where we know where our children are going to be at certain parts of the year and what we can expect. I think that's extremely important, and someone who really doesn't want to pay for a private education coming up, I feel this will solve a lot of problems.
Thank you. Ethics will be our next subject. The New York State Public Ethics Commission has been working overtime these last few years. 2 more legislators have been accused in the news last week of abusing the public trust and taxpayers' money. What needs to be done to ensure the voters that the representatives will serve them honestly and responsibly? I'd like to begin with Mr. Hoylman.
Well, I think the Ethics Commission is a good first step. I certainly think that all matters should be referred to it and not just some, as we've seen in the last week or two what a problem that has been. I certainly think that tied in with ethics is making the legislator's job a full-time job, which is something I'm committed to do. No more side businesses, no more nonprofits being run, after hours. We have to really have full transparency. And another piece of that component, Mary, is campaign finance reform. Certainly the pay-to-play culture in Albany wouldn't exist, I believe, if we had a system similar to New York City, where contributions were matched by a public system and there was transparency and campaign spending caps.
Thank you. Mr. Greco?
Absolutely. Transparency, through the recent issues that have gone on, as a taxpayer, things that happen make me angry. I want to know where my tax dollars are going. I feel that there should be a stronger oversight of what's going on and reporting on where money is going to these non-for-profits and who's approving this. And, I agree with Brad, campaign financing. Running this campaign, there's no matching funds like at the city level. And this, eliminating some of these corporate donors and, even the union donors to keep it amongst the people who are living in the community.
Okay, Ms. Inlaw.
One of the reasons why I'm running is because I believe that corporations are not people. I also believe that there are too many political power structures that keep the old boys network, and it's really enough is enough. I'm sick and tired of seeing the corruption and the shutout of ordinary New Yorkers and people all over the country for that matter. I believe that we need campaign finance reform desperately. It'll allow to equal the playing field. No more pay to play. People say it, but they don't. They're saying it in our communities and they're saying it in government, but are they living by it? I am living by it. I'm a teacher in New York City. I have no political or establishment behind me, no special interest group. And I believe that if I am elected, I will be the voice for the people. And the truth is that we need ordinary people to be in Albany, not corruption.
Thank you. Actually, all of you touched on this, so we'll go ahead and go to campaign finance. Do you favor reforming campaign financing rules at the state level by significantly lowering limits on contributions to candidates and to housekeeping accounts of political parties? Would you support a system similar to the one established by the Campaign Finance Board in New York City? And I'd like to start with you, Ms. Inlaw.
I'm glad you did that because the whole reason why I'm passionate about campaign finance reform, I believe that it will allow more people to become involved, more people are aware of what is going on, and we need campaign finance reform because with more involvement, we have more watchdogs and less temptation for corruption. We need a model just like New York City has where there's matching funds. We also need more transparency. People need to know where their monies are coming from. Is there a vested interest? If you have a person who's backing you and they're giving you tens or thousands of dollars and they come from big developers, do you have an allegiance to them or do you have a voice for the community? Do you have allegiance for a person who is necessarily a corporate act or do you have a voice for the community. I believe that corporations are not people, so we need campaign finance reform.
Thank you very much. Mr. Greco?
Absolutely for campaign financing reform. It's very difficult as a candidate to go out there and, gain funds for your election and, ask folks, especially when you're an outsider. I agree with Tamika that you don't have any special interest groups, or you're not supported by the the Democratic machine that goes on, or who's in favor, and it's very difficult. With matching funds, I think it would bring more people, more players to the game. It would spark more interest in government. It would get new people involved. They sit there and complain, fraud in Albany, but you have the same people in place for decades. And the new people can't get in because they have this basic wall or machine that's built. So it stops new blood from getting into Albany with new ideas.
Mr. Wellman?
Yeah, Mary. Well, you can give over $100,000 to Governor Cuomo, which is about 10 times what you can give to President Obama. So New York's system is out of whack. There's no question about it. You also, amazingly, don't even have to list your employer when you donate to a candidate. We really need to shed some light on the entire system. Part of the problem, too, also, Mary, is that you mentioned the housekeeping accounts that the parties keep. You can give unlimited amounts to those accounts. So if you've maxed out to candidate A, but yet want to continue to support him or her, you can just give to candidate A's political party, and of course the party knows that you're really giving to A, but it's going to the party housekeeping account instead. And you could give to the last day that you wanted to that account. So we really need to enact expenditure limits. And the way to do that is to have a public system of matching funds like we have in New York City, which has worked exceedingly well in tracking the pay-to-play and ending corporate donations at that level. So campaign finance has to be a priority, and I'm so happy that Tanika and Tom and I all share in that goal.
Thank you so much. This will be the last question before our closing statements. And it's about collaboration within the Senate. Our state is experiencing some of the toughest economic times in history, yet party politics have dominated over the needs of the rights of the citizens. And do you feel that as a senator, you can do your job and reach across party lines to ensure that bills get passed quickly and don't get stuck in limbo? I would like to start with Mr. Greco.
Absolutely. I mean, you're an elected official that's supposed to represent the public, and it shouldn't be about your personal interest or your group's personal interest. It should be about the needs of the community that you serve, and that needs to be seen on both sides. And working with, being bipartisan and getting things done. Absolutely. Anything to achieve what needs to be done and what the community needs.
Thank you. Ms. In-Law?
Yes, I am a teacher. I have not been playing political positioning for the last 10 years. I have been working in the community as an NAACP president. I've lobbied in Albany against the minimum wage. I've done a lot of things for people. People are who I want to represent, not corporations, not special interest groups. I believe that if we do that, if we have a Albany that has more candidates that are representing the people, have less interest in other things like corporations or special interests or big developers, we will have an understanding on both ends, Republicans or Democrats. There'll be less gridlock.
Thank you very much. I actually did that so we could allow you all a little bit of extra time to have closing statements. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Holman.
Please. Thank you. Yes, in terms of bipartisanship, Mary, I think it's about issues as much as it's about politics. And there are a number of big issues that I think that I would, if I'm elected, like to reach across the aisle on. The first is hydrofracking. my potential colleagues in the southern tier, the western part of the state, have serious decisions to make about whether they want to proceed with hydrofracking. I think it's a terrible, terrible mistake. The stories I've read about Pennsylvania and the water that has to be boiled or the illnesses from heavy metals from residents is really frightening stuff. I think we can develop a coalition, whether it's Republican and Democrat or East and West on that issue. The other is guns. You know, we haven't had a new gun control law in over a decade in New York. And, you know, they're not calling it in New York City the summer of guns for nothing. So we really need to have new restrictive gun laws, background checks, micro-stamping where bullet casings can be traced to guns. And I think that's something that we can work on with our colleagues in the suburbs. So a suburban and urban connection on that front.
Thank you very much. All right, I'd like to allow you all a little bit of extra time. This is an open seat. Like I said, mentioned earlier, State Senator Thomas Dwayne is retiring. And so I'd like to give you each 2 minutes, if that's all right with you. And we're going to go ahead and go in the order that we started. Mr. Greco, you'll begin, and we'll end with Ms. In-Law.
Great. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm running for state senate to conquer a lot of issues. What we need in this district is affordable housing, affordable health care, which I feel, you know, we haven't spoke about, but we need a single payer state option, much like they do in San Francisco and what they're attempting to do in Vermont. And also, I agree with Brad with the hydrofracking. I think this is an absolutely horrible, horrible thing that, you know, there's conflicting evidence and we really don't know what the consequences are. And the last thing New York needs is another love canal. And I think that this needs to be stopped until we figure out exactly what's going on. And going back to affordable housing, we're losing our sense of community here in New York. Every neighborhood is now starting to look like a cookie cutter neighborhood. You couldn't, you know, pretty soon you won't be able to tell the difference between the Upper West Side, Soho, Stuytown. Everything's going to look the same. I really think we need to protect our communities by improving the schools and offer affordable housing.
Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mary, for the opportunity, and to the League of Women Voters and Manhattan Neighborhood Network. It's a real honor to sit here tonight and to follow Tom Dwayne, who was a real champion of progressive causes in the state Senate. It's going to be my responsibility or my two opponents' responsibility to follow Tom's great work. We need a fighter in Albany to do that. I hope you agree that my record, my background, and my qualifications suggest I'm the best person. I'm concerned about the state of poverty in New York. You know, we have a 20% poverty rate in New York City at the moment. That's 1.6 million people living in poverty. 30% of our children are in poverty. 40% of single moms. What are we going to do about it? We need a progressive tax system. We need to make certain that our social safety net is strengthened through a new millionaire's tax, through ending the exemption on carried interest, to finding new ways to stimulate our economy by raising the minimum wage. We also need to make certain that we support our infrastructure at the same time by improving our schools, making sure that parents have a voice, by protecting our stock of affordable housing. Places like Peter Cooper, Stuytown, 25,000 people live there and are in constant threat of eviction. We need to make certain that our campaign finance laws are transparent so that our citizenry has the confidence in us that we honor them by achieving. So whether it's campaign finance reform, improving our public schools, strengthening our affordable housing, I hope to work in Albany on all of those issues. You know, at the end of the day, I think a good legislator is a good listener. And I believe this is the part of a longer conversation that I hope to have with my opponents and with the voters, and if I'm lucky enough to be elected moving forward to represent the citizens of the 27th District to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Very much. Ms. In-Law.
I'd like to piggyback on something my opponent Hoylman says. A good legislator is a person who can touch people at the top and the bottom and bring together understanding. I think I'm the best candidate for that. coming from my background as an educator, I'm definitely on the ground with people in the trenches every day. I understand what education reform is and why it's needed. I understand what a budget crisis in our system means. I am in the system. I know what it is from the inside. I've experienced schools having to cut back, having to use teachers in different various parts of the building, and children are suffering. There's overcrowded schools. You're understanding that there are schools that are having 2 and 3 schools in one building. This has to stop. We need to make sure that our public school children are not being sold down the river at the cost of corporations putting for-profit business like the charter schools in our buildings. I have nothing against having an alternative education. I just need it to be a fair opportunity for all children. I am definitely for affordable housing. Like I said before, I grew up in the Mitchell-Lama. We need more models like that. There is too many luxury condominiums that people cannot afford. The people who are living, yes.
Finish your thought.
Okay. People who are not living with the quality of life that they used to be when you were a teacher and you graduated from school, you will be able to come out and have a good quality of life. Right. Today, we have to change that, and I hope people see that in me and vote.
All right, thank you very much. For more information on the voting information, check out the League's website or call the League at 212-725-3541. And if you are enrolled in Democratic Party, there is a primary election next Thursday, September 13th. Polls will be open between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Thank you very much.